Okay, so loads of interesting stuff in the newspapers, quite varied today in terms of the order that I'm going to go with. First, we should start with the Irish Independent. I'll start with the Irish Independent here. Offaly Rule denies Rising Star senior spot. Now, this is I mean, in fairness, a great story, but also really interesting in terms of how counties are looking after their players. So Cian Johnson has been an absolute hotshot for Offaly, played the O'Byrne Cup, played in the league, but is actually going to play in the underage championship for Offaly rather than the senior championship. This is not something that Kerry, for example, are doing. Clifford's going to play in the senior championship. He's going to play with the senior team. He's making the point that he wants to play. He is ready for it, and who knows if he's going to still be living in Ireland, if he's going to have injury or form. But the county board is saying, no, you're underage. You've got to stick with your underage team. Most counties aren't this far-sighted. Most counties don't actually look after the short-term welfare of the players. They're like, get out there.
Mm-hmm. And that's the way you would expect it to happen in a club like, or in a county like Kerry or like Dublin. For Offaly to have this farsightedness is actually impressively surprising. I didn't actually see this coming at all. I thought for sure this guy has been arguably their best player in the National League. He should therefore step right up and just play inter-county football. It will have a hugely positive impact on him in terms of avoiding injuries, in terms of being good to go for next year when they'll get an even better senior player. But as you say, the drawbacks are is if he doesn't get this kind of bite of the cherry of the glamour of inter-county senior football, he might just, you know, look a little bit more further field and say, I'm going on a J1 next summer.
Could do, absolutely could do. And so it's Offaly definitely treading a fine line there. Another interesting story from Colin Keys there. Dub's French visit may not come under camp spotlight. So that's the headline on the PDF that we got last night, and it got changed. Dublin Somme visit adds to training camp confusion. So the Dubs went to the Somme. They were at the Ulster Tower on Saturday, a famous war landmark that stands in memory of Ulster soldiers who died fighting for the British Army in World War I.
Right.
Not your average GAA team's pre-championship trip. So they're not sure. The confusion is whether or not it represents, would you categorise this as a training session, a training camp? Did they go to the fields of the Somme to see, history and kind of be motivated, or did they go for collective training?
Well, the motivation could be a form of collective training, right? I mean,
it is. You're training the mind.
Like, I was just thinking about this, like reading a couple of the Dubs interviews at the weekend. Like, what is the thing that is motivating them now at this point? Because let's face it, they don't really care about this whole idea of let's be the second or the third team in history to do 4 in a row and then subsequently do 5 in a row. I genuinely don't think that that's a big thing for them until next year, until the 5 is potentially on the table. So now it's like, what is the real motivation going to be? And you've got this genius in Jim Gavin who's like, do you know what? Let's go to one of the biggest battlefields in Europe and let's show them what a real battlefield is like. And potentially, is the end goal to lessen the pressure on them? Or is it to increase the sort of motivation and say, you guys have had it tough in pre-season training, but look how tough these guys had it. I don't know what the end game is here, but I would certainly say motivation is a form of training.
It's pretty unique, right? I haven't heard of this type of stuff before. This is the modern day version of the hill that the Clare hurlers had to run up. This is like Jim Gavin. Fair play. And so if it has been found that that's collective training, then, or that was a training camp abroad, then they'll lose home venue for a game next year. So there's no game in Croker. I don't think that's going to happen. No. I think whatever happens, they're going to be getting those games in Croker. Anyway, okay, so on to the Times Ireland edition. Lancaster, I'm staying at Leinster. Great news from Leinster perspective, given how successful Stuart Lancaster has been as part of the coaching ticket there. And Rochford says location hurts Mayo hopes. Is that story that we covered a bit on the show last year when you start to look at the amount of... so the figures come out every year for how much money it costs to run the inter-county teams, and Mayo are always way up the top. And primarily that's because their travel costs are absolutely huge. Now they're renting pitches in the Midlands to try and make sure that the venue is like halfway between Mayo and Dublin. 40% I think of the team was the figure. 40% of the squad are based in Dublin. They're not getting home till 12:30, 1:30. I did a league game down in Mayo last year, and like by the time you get home, and I hadn't obviously played the match, but by the time you're getting home it is late, you are absolutely wrecked, and that was like a one-off. But if you're doing that for 4 or 5 months in the darkness, at least when the weather's a little bit better and you're getting up early and you're getting home late, the weather's decent and you feel okay about life. But when there's all that travel involved, so definitely I think that's a big thing. That's the only paper that has the Lancaster I'm staying angle, because he's obviously linked with Harlequins, and it's Owen Slot, their chief rugby correspondent, writing that, so you can be guaranteed that that's in the UK version. edition of the Times as well. Most of the other Lancaster stories are about the comments yesterday with regards to Joey Carbery, which I guess we're going to get to in the Irish Times. So here you go. Lancaster would like Carbery to stay tangled up in blue. Very calm and reasoned comments from Stuart Lancaster, where he talks for about 10 minutes and then eventually gets to the point, well, actually, I think he probably should say. But that's the first line that everybody picks out, naturally enough, because here's a former international coach saying, we want to keep one of our best players as opposed to shipping him off to the north.
Yeah, I think this is kind of case closed at this point. He's been in the studio himself, Carbery, and said he wants to stay at Leinster. Stuart Lancaster says he wants to keep him at Leinster. I think this is that book closed right shut there.
Something happened in between.
Yeah?
Joe Schmidt had a meeting with Joey Carbery.
Okay, I've missed this.
Said, you know, there's room for a 10 up there. What do you think?
And do we know the outcome of this meeting?
It's being considered. I mean, it's being considered in the week before the Champions Cup final. The first time this conversation happened was the week before the Champions Cup quarter-final, and it's rumbled on for 2 months. So you've got to say the handling of this from the IRFU has not been great if you are involved with Leinster or if you're involved with Joey Carbery. It's like literally the most important stage of the season, and you're having your head turned by a request to up sticks and move to Belfast, where when they were asking you to do this, they didn't even have a coach in place. Now they've got a coach in place who they're not quite sure is actually going to be in place for the start of the season or not. That still has to be negotiated. So not the best handling from an IRFU perspective.
Well, if you're looking at it, if you're going to play hardball at any point, now's the time when the IRFU are like, we have to play our best hand right now. We've just won the Grand Slam. We're viewed as one of the best countries in the world. The IRFU policy is being glorified left, right and centre. Now's the time where we've got to do what we think is best for the national team. And if, like, fair enough, I might disagree with it, but if they genuinely believe that Carbery going and getting full game time at 10 for Ulster next season is the best way forward, then by absolute means, like, go ahead and do it.
Maybe wait until after the Champions Cup's over?
Well, there's also that timing issue, yeah, which would be a far smarter thing.
If you're just going to do it anyway, right?
Yeah, true.
Leinster's Tom Brady is the... apparently Lancaster has been sending clips of Tom Brady to Johnny Sexton saying he's going to go on till he's like in his mid-40s. You could do the same.
Potentially. Given how gruelling the rugby season is in comparison to the NFL season, that might be one difference in the two things right there.
You met one of Tom Brady's linemen.
Oh yes, I did. Donta Hightower. Shout out to Donta, good morning to you. I'm sure he's watching this morning. I met him after the Celtics game in a pub called The Harp, and he was there, and I was like, Donta, how's it going? Gave me a fist pump, and I was like, can I get a picture? And he's like, I'm going to go to the bathroom and we'll get a picture after that. Next thing I look out the window and I just see Donta Hightower walking across the road and leaving the bar. Just by being in that proximity to them, there was a couple of other Patriots there. David Andrews and Marcus Cannon were also in the proximity. People literally came up to us because it looked like we were in the entourage and said straight to our faces, are you famous? And then if you said no, they're like, well, screw you.
Yeah.
Other people said yes.
OTBAM.
Other
people.
I forgot about that. I forgot about my very profession there. But they literally have no interest in you if you're around a Patriot and you're not famous, basically. So in future, say yes.
Now, man, I'm an agent.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm a physiotherapist or something, but I don't know why I thought physiotherapist would be what is something I look like. An agent would have been a good shout.
Here you go. Come on.
Next time.
What have we got?
We'll start with the Irish Daily Mail. On my front, they're leading with rugby. They've also got a couple of GAA stories. Don't Go Joey reads the headline. Lancaster still hopes Carbery will stay at blue, while Mayo's Rochford piles pressure on Galway to build up to one of the biggest championship games I can remember in May anyway, has begun today in earnest, and it's going to roll on over the next couple of days. We'll be previewing it later in the week. We'll move on to the Heralds. They lead with football this morning. Lovren says, we can do it. Pool defender aiming to wrap up Euro qualification. Dubs will have to hold Reid as well. Dublin must try and silence the top hurler of this decade. And TJ Reid when their Leinster SHC campaign opens against Kilkenny on Sunday. That's the opening paragraph of that story. It's Anthony Cunningham who was speaking to the media in the last couple of days. Let's have a look at the back page of the Irish Daily Mirror this morning. Let's win the cup for Sir Alex. Juan Mata, we've been overwhelmed by the sad news about the incomparable Fergie and must win a trophy to dedicate to him. We've also got Juve's Allegri is interested in taking the Gunners' job. There seems to be mixed reports here about Massimiliano Allegri and whether or not he'd be happy to work under the current structures at Arsenal, but Juventus' structures aren't that dissimilar to Arsenal, so that'll be an interesting one to see how it develops. It looks like he is going to be the front runner, although there is a couple of other ones, like on the back of the Irish Daily Star. Carlo is Gunners' backstop, says David Woods' story here. If Arsenal can't get Allegri, the Star are reporting this morning that Carlo Ancelotti will be the man in the hot seat but one of his aims will be to actually nurture a new boss like a Mikel Arteta or a Patrick Vieira to then become the next manager. So essentially a stopgap.
That always works, right? A lame duck manager with the next guy working away in your background going, nah, I wouldn't have done that.
In fairness.
Nah, Carlo. Oh, I don't agree with that, Carlo.
Carlo Ancelotti is the best stopgap boss in the world. He's done it for a living for Chelsea, what is it, twice, 3 times? I mean, it's worked out quite well both times he did it.
I mean, the first time he wasn't actually a stopgap. He was like, I've got this job for, look, I'm Carlo Ancelotti. I'm like a Champions League winning manager. I'm like a genius.
Yeah.
Isn't that what?
Is that what happened?
Gus Hiddink is the guy you're thinking of?
Yeah, that's probably it actually. Yeah, no, Carlo Ancelotti did it for like a stopgap for a little while as well. Gus Hiddink obviously.
Yeah, but Ancelotti got the job full on property. Like he was like, I'm Carlo. Hear me roar.
Well, if Carlo goes full Carlo at Arsenal, I think Arsenal are going to be very, very successful. But if he's there as a stopgap to kind of nurture Mikel Arteta or Patrick Vieira, can't see that being too profitable. Also, on the back of the Irish Daily Star this morning, their lead is 1 title and Celts will fold. Dave King, who's over as the chairman at Rangers, has said that Rangers just need 1 title and Celtic will kind of go back to being second best in Scotland, or at least there will be a good title race every single year, which he's right in saying.
No, he's not.
If they win 1 title, like winning 1 title...
They win 1 title what?
Then there will suddenly be...
Celtic will fold.
Well, Celtic will fold. That part is nonsense. But that is the headline where he actually says that. He kind of like talks about the huge gap between Celtic and Rangers and how it's actually not that big, that Hibs and Aberdeen are actually punching way above their weight at the moment, and that the gap isn't actually as big as it should be. The part about Celtic folding, I think that's way down in the comments there. It's not actually something he was leading with.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't read too much into that. The back of the Sun then is Mesut Ozil, sick of OzILL. Arsenal stars fed up with Mesut injuries, claims he is picking and choosing games. Martin Keown is quoted in that story as well this morning, kind of giving out about Ozil, saying that that back injury is one of those ones that is very, very hard to verify. You can't actually go on and say, listen, here is my evidence that I actually have a back injury, and that they're suggesting that he may or may not actually have a back injury. And then finally, the back of The Guardian leads with this Donald McRae interview, Eamon McGee being interviewed. It's a brilliant piece. I've had a beautiful life, reads the headline. We might read a couple of quotes out later on in the programme, but from what I've read so far, it's a fantastic piece. And he kind of starts by chatting to McRae with a can of Carling in his hand at 11 a.m. in the morning. He's got scars on his hand. It hurts him to actually pick up the can of Carling because he's been in a bar fight the night before. He's a man with a target on his head for sure. It's a fascinating piece.
Yeah. Yeah, very not that complicated a character. A bad person in many respects. There's a new book out about Eamon McGee, and definitely be conflicted about whether or not you want to bring any more of his story to light.